Well, we're holding up a card, and Amy Fish is my guest. An absolutely magnificent book with a very significant cote-saint-luc angle. The book is called 1 in 6 Million, The Baby by the Roadside and the Man Who Retraced a Holocaust Survivor's Last Identity. Amy, welcome.
Thank you.
Great to have you with me today. And as I said, I read the book, and sadly, there was many reasons why I wrote it. First of all, of course, anything about the Holocaust is sad, but it was Stanley Diamond, who was a good friend of mine. I knew him for decades, a genealogist, a businessman turned genealogist, and passed away just a few months ago. He was in his early 90s, but I thought Stanley Diamond was going to live forever. And, you ended up coming up with this story, and Stanley Diamond is a central component, is he not?
He is absolutely the hero of 1 in 6 million.
So let's start off right now for the viewers who haven't read this book. Tell us what the book is about.
The book is about a baby that was left by the side of the road in Poland in 1942 with a little note tucked in that had her name and her birthday. And a childless couple, Polish, was walking by, picked her up and raised her as their own. And she always wondered who she really was. It remained a mystery, Mike, for 73 years until it fell into the hands of Stanley Diamond.
I found that, first of all, Stanley Diamond, of course, was a genius, and he did so many amazing things. But did he get to read this book before he passed away in any form?
Yes. He knew that the book was coming. He wrote the foreword
He did?
for the book. Yeah, well, he wrote
That was
the
kind of
foreword for
eerie.
the book.
That was very
Yeah.
eerie, because in a story I'm going to write as well for the suburban newspaper, I quote that, and I never thought I'd quote Stanley again. It was almost like he was still with us.
I know. I'm so lucky because we
Yeah.
really got that in just not even months
Yes.
before he passed.
And I know the way Stanley was, he would have loved to have been part of the launch.
I know.
That would have been really something big for him. So let's go back now, and first off, tell us how you met Stanley Diamond.
I met Stanley Diamond at a Shiva. One thing about Montrealers, and I've written about this, is that we tend to go to Shivas. Even if we don't know the person super well, it could be someone from our grade 6 class that lost, God forbid, a parent or something. We tend to be there for each other in times of mourning. And I was at a Shiva, Stanley was at the same Shiva. We got to talking. He told me that he does family tree research. My eyes glazed over. I thought, this is going to be the most dull afternoon. It was an afternoon Shiva call, and I thought, what have I done? But then I said, give me a story, Stan. Give me a for instance. And he told me this crazy story about this baby and how who is now a almost 80-year-old woman living in Siberia, and how he had retraced her family tree for her. And I went down the rabbit hole. What can I say?
So this was 6 years ago, right?
Yeah, 2019.
Okay, so where did you go from there?
I started meeting with Stanley. We met almost weekly, including at the Cote-Saint-Luc Library, by the way.
Okay.
For 2 years, we met at the Cote-Saint-Luc Library in that little study room every Sunday afternoon.
Right.
And talked about his experience. And then I tried to write the book. I couldn't get into the story. I couldn't figure it out. I've written 3 other books, but they are a little bit funnier in nature. And I wasn't sure how to tell a serious story. So I applied to an MFA, Masters of Fine Arts program in Halifax and King's College. It was COVID.
Right.
So I was lucky.
Yeah.
And I got in, and I was able to do most of it online. And this was my project.
So during COVID, were you Zooming with Stan?
Yeah. Somebody else asked me this, and I calculated I probably interviewed him more than 100 times.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And we became friends.
Yeah, of
He
course.
was such a he had such a magnetic personality.
Yeah.
His grandmother and my great grandmother were sisters, which I didn't know. But of course, to speak to Stanley is to understand where you fit on his family tree, on your family
Right.
tree, on the Montreal constellation,
Right.
who you know in
Yeah.
common.
Yeah. This book is written in many forms. It's, first of all, the story of Maria, which is absolutely remarkable, but it's kind of done in sections, and you really tell the life story of Stanley Diamond. It's almost as if it was meant to be. Stanley Diamond had a remarkable life, passed away a few months ago, and this is almost his autobiography.
It was our intent. You know, Stanley and I, when we worked on the project together, we knew that we wanted to sell it to a publisher.
Yeah.
And we knew that we wanted to tell Stanley's story, and we wanted to tell a great example, almost like a crowning glory of his career. And I really felt, and I think Stanley agreed, that the Maria story was one of his greatest achievements.
So, first off, for the readers again, we learn how Stanley got involved in genealogy. Would like to tell a little bit of that story?
Stanley's family had a genetic trait called beta thalassemia, that if two people with the same trait were to have a child together, they had a risk of having a particular genetic disease. And the trait that they had, Stanley learned, was super unique. Not often seen in Jewish families, very rarely seen in Ashkenazi families. And so Stanley was propelled, like driven by the mission to, I gotta warn everybody about this. I gotta find all my family members, and I gotta tell them, you have to be tested before you find your mate and before you go on to have children, because it's risky.
Yeah. And he had a very successful business career. He was able to retire at a very young age. He went to Harvard, and he traveled all over the world, but genealogy, once this happened, it became almost a mission for him.
Yes.
And the way it worked is, I like the story you told about how his daughter gave him a very special birthday present.
Yeah. His daughter gave him a gift. I actually think it was Father's Day.
Yeah, that's right.
And it was genealogy software. It was on discs.
Yeah.
And he said when he opened that gift, that's when he knew it kind of went from a hobby to a passion.
Yeah. He was the kind of guy who, you know, my father-in-law called him, just sent him an email one day and said, you know, I have relatives, they were in Poland, and like he responded to every email. He wanted to help everybody. I mean, he basically was the executive director of this group, JRI Poland, and did this for decades, and he traveled a lot. He had a lot of celebrities who he connected with. One of the more recent ones was Doug Imhoff, the former second man, Kamala Harris's husband. So there's a lot of stories there. And has his family read the book?
Not yet.
Okay.
But they're super excited about it.
Yes, yes,
yeah,
exactly.
I'm really lucky because his daughter Jessica is coming to the launch in Toronto, and I'm excited about that. One of his nephews, a cousin. I have some of his people that I'm hosting at the Montreal launch too.
Right.
And you know, it's so sad that we can't have Stanley, but it's lucky that we got this down.
My gosh, yes. I mean, you know, obviously I could just picture my phone ringing because Stanley emailed me, but he called me all the time. He called me at my office. There were not a lot of people that call my office line anymore, but he called my office. He would leave messages, and he still had his landline, of course. But he would have been like your biggest marketing publicist for this book.
I know, and he couldn't wait to do it.
Yeah, but there's a lot of people that knew Stanley Diamond, and I think that there's a very wide audience for this book. Why don't we get into the fact that this is a story of Maria, and Maria, how did Maria? She lived a very difficult life. The parents that took care of her were angels, but then her adoptive mother or her mother passed away, and father got remarried, and this mother was not nice to her at all. And the father very reluctantly let her go. So she really left that man. I think she was 14 years old.
Yeah.
Very, very sad story. And then she didn't have an easy life, but she went on and got married and had her own children.
Yes, she got married and she had a daughter, and her daughter had a son.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure.
But she was told when she was young by these parents the truth, that they found her, right?
Yes,
And
she was always told that they found her on the day that the Jews were rounded up and sent to the ghetto, not necessarily put on a train.
Right.
It's a subtle difference, but it's not a subtle difference.
Right.
So she grew up always thinking, well, if they were in a ghetto, maybe I could have found them.
Right.
She didn't realize what
Yeah.
we know.
Yeah. So she moved on with her life, and you connected with her, did you not? How did
I
you
did,
how did you
absolutely.
communicate with her?
She had a translator on the Zoom. So there was one square was her, one square was the translator, one square was me, and of course I invited Stanley to join.
Right.
And he really just kind of observed. And it was interesting, you know, I've never interviewed someone through a translator before. So
Yeah.
I asked the question, the translator, and as I say in the book, 1 in 6 million, when we came on the Zoom, Maria and I were wearing the same shade of lipstick.
Oh my gosh.
So we instantly connected over our makeup, and we
Right.
had a good laugh, and then the rest of it was easy.
Did you travel there?
I would have loved to travel there, and I had plans to, but you know, 2019 means it was 2020 and 2021,
Right.
and I just couldn't get to Siberia.
Right. Exactly. Not exactly an easy story. So the story evolves, and to me, when I followed this book, I said to myself, if I didn't know Stanley and I didn't know Amy, I would say this is just a make-believe story, because all these connections were like surreal. Like, how
It
could
was
they happen
surreal.
in real life?
Right?
Yeah.
Like, imagine,
Yeah.
one of my favorite ones was
Yeah.
they were trying to get a DNA test into Israel to verify someone's identity, and it's
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
not so easy to get DNA tests in Israel. And so Stanley called the head of Family Tree DNA, Bennett Greenspan,
Right.
and he says, my business partner's on the plane right now on
Yes.
his way to Israel, and he happens to have an extra DNA test
Just
in
happened
his
to carry it
suitcase.
with him, yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I had originally, in my first draft of the book, I did a whole paragraph about imagine if everybody brought their work stuff with them.
Yeah.
You know, so like, oh, I just happen to
Yeah.
have a broom with me, or I just
Yeah.
happen to have industrial machinery. But it was
Yeah.
lucky
Yeah.
that this guy's job was DNA testing. He had one in his bag. They were able to get it in Israel.
Yeah.
What are the
Yeah.
odds? And the whole book unfolds that way.
Yes, exactly. Now, Stanley, again, right out of a book, you're related to Stanley.
Yes.
Stanley had a connection to Maria.
It was crazy. So something I learned about DNA testing is that the way it works is there are many different DNA tests that can give you different information, Mike. And so one thing we talk about in 1 in 6 million is that you can be related to someone on what they call a mitochondrial DNA, which means you're related on your mother's line, but it could be 20 generations back.
Right.
It could be from the same Ashkenazi, you know, seed, relative, whatever. And what Maria and Stanley found is that they were in 100% mitochondrial DNA match. So that means somewhere along their mother's line, they had a shared female ancestor.
Unbelievable.
Because I'm related to Stanley on my mother's line
Right.
and his mother's line,
Right.
we're all part of the same gene pool.
Yeah.
It's just a crazy, crazy coincidence. It doesn't seem real.
Did Stanley meet Maria in person?
No.
He never did, okay.
No.
And Maria has been to Israel.
Yeah.
This has now been a couple of years. How's she doing?
It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she's been able to really embrace her Judaism.
Yes.
Yeah.
She's really involved with the Chabad in Omsk, which is
Yeah.
the name of her city.
Yeah.
She celebrates the holidays. She still is in touch with her relatives.
Yeah. When I read this book, one of the things that came to mind, and I know it's early because you're just starting the promotional tour of the book itself, but this has a movie written all over it.
You think so?
I think so. Don't you? Have you thought about it? Look at all the
Well-
movies that have been written, have been produced about the Holocaust. Just think of that opening scene where these parents find this baby in the bushes, basically.
Yeah.
And then the connection of how she finds her life. I mean, you know, I really do believe there's a movie there.
Yeah.
Am I the
that
first
would be
person to
exciting.
propose it
No,
to?
you are not the first person.
Okay.
You are not the first person,
Yeah.
and I couldn't say that I have not had interest, but I can't get ahead of myself.
No,
Let's get the book into
absolutely
the world,
not. Absolutely
read
not.
the book, and then we'll talk. Watch.
When
the
you
movie.
say into the world, is this book going to be sold worldwide?
Well, the way books work is you sell different rights to different countries, and they don't all happen at the same time. So I'm lucky; I have a great agent. He lives in Toronto, and that business side of it is for him to worry about.
Is it going to be translated into different languages?
That's still ongoing.
But again, something else that probably would be of interest, because I could see people in Russia. Well, who knows? Russia's not a good example, but could be people in Poland, could be people in Germany, certainly people in Israel. But I mean, so this book for you is not just a launch and a tour. This could be something that's going to keep you busy for some time.
It's funny that you say that, because often when you're on a book tour, people ask you, what is your next project? What are
Right.
you doing next?
Yes.
And I find with this particularly, with 1 in 6 million, like, we have to give it its full chance to
Yes.
breathe.
Yes.
Because somebody else has asked me if I would have any interest in writing it for younger children. They see it almost as a picture book.
Right.
And so you could go picture book, you could go
Yeah.
translations, you
There's
could
so
go
many
movie, like there's
spins
so
to
many,
it.
yeah.
Absolutely. The other thing, working here, and we're actually doing this interview at the English Montreal School Board in our nice boardroom, and I've been running a Holocaust education program for the last number of years, and one of the things that I'm most proud of is that we bring as many non-Jewish students not only to the Holocaust Museum, where it's life-changing for them, but also we bring them to guest speakers, or speakers come to them. This year, Federation CJA was very supportive, the Irish Slack. They knew that, with what's been going on in the world, with the increased anti-Semitism, that we need to sensitize the young people. So we've been able to send more kids. But is this book, and you being a speaker, could we look at Amy Fish speaking to students about this book?
100%. I actually, as a test, sent the book to a couple of high school teachers, not Jewish, like at James Lang, and the feedback has been like tears running down my eyes, because
Okay.
I'm making the teachers cry. The teachers are writing to me. One of them said, my classroom was dusty, I swear.
Oh my.
Just to see, is it appropriate for high schoolers? And the feedback I'm getting is, yeah,
I think it
we
is,
wanna
because
get it into
it's actually, when you look at some Holocaust books, they're very graphic, but this one is more of a story. It's a heartwarming story. You have to include what happened in the Holocaust. But books like this, visits to the Holocaust Museum, if you look at all the encampments and all the terrible anti-Semitism that the world has experienced, more so than ever before since October 7th, I think the timing of the book is impeccable.
Thank you.
Yes, exactly. Well, the book is available. This interview is going to be airing at the beginning of April. So where will people be able to get this book?
This book is available wherever you get your books.
Okay, perfect. And I'm sure we're going to make sure that the Cote-Saint-Luc Public Library has a copy of the book. Amy Fish, thank you so much for joining me. Congratulations on a masterpiece.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Amy Fish has been my guest. Mike Cohen signing out.